Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was once again directed by Steven Spielberg and produced by George Lucas, and this was the sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Everyone experienced Indiana Jones for the first time. The world was changed in regards to adventure filmmaking. Everyone was so excited and enthralled by that first movie. Spielberg was walking into unknown territory here. He had never made a sequel to one of his films before, even though technically this is actually a prequel, taking place 1 year before Raiders of the Lost Ark. So he had a lot on his plate, and what you can't dispute about Temple of Doom is that Spielberg did not repeat himself. In no way is this a copy of Raiders. It's not derivative of that film in any way. It is a completely different movie in almost every way. It's considerably more violent. It takes place in basically just one location, underground for most of the movie. All the characters introduced in Raiders aren't in this film. There's no Marcus, Sala, Marion, none of them. This is an entirely different movie. It's also super bloody and so violent that it inspired the creation of the PG-13 rating. Many people saw this film along with Gremlins in 1984 and thought PG is just too tame for this movie. The film received significant backlash because parents took their kids to the movie thinking it would be okay, and because of how violent it was, they got really mad. So Spielberg suggested the creation of the PG-13 rating. So Temple of Doom is actually a very historic film in that way. And I'm just going to tell you this right now. If you clicked on this review hoping that I was going to bash Temple of Doom or confirm or validate your negative viewpoint of the movie, you're not going to get that here. I unabashedly, without remorse, adore this movie. I have loved Temple of Doom for so fucking long. This film is so much fun for me to watch. Despite its extremely dark themes, this film is an absolute blast. I have problems with it. I'm not completely just nostalgic. I just rewatched the movie. I watch it every year, once or twice. I've always loved Temple of Doom, and for a lot of the reasons we're going to discuss, but one of the biggest ones being how different it is. Having seen all 4 Indiana Jones movies, this one stands out. It's the oddball, bizarre kid who stands in the corner at the party. Nobody likes him, but me. I like you. Come out of the corner. You're cool. Temple of Doom. It's time to reevaluate you. So as I enjoy doing with these older reviews, I'd like to tell you a story, how I first saw the movie. When I was a kid, Temple of Doom was viewed as the bad one in my house. And not because of quality, because of content. It was more violent, my parents had heard about it, they knew of the controversy around it, and because of that, it was sort of a no-no in my house. And I never really asked why. I mean, I'm like 5, 6, 7 years old, you know, and my sisters were like, no, you can't rent Temple of Doom, that's the bad one. I didn't know why it was the bad one, I just always knew Temple of Doom's the bad one, we can't watch it. So I never did. Then one day I was about 10 years old. I lived in a tiny apartment with my parents. My sisters had already moved out, and I used to pal around with the kid who lived beneath me. We'd hang out, we'd ride our bicycles or whatever, and I would go over to his house sometimes when my parents would be at work during the summer. And they left me home alone because I was a responsible, like, 10, 11-year-old at this point, and they trusted me to be home alone. So I'm with this kid. And his mom opens up her media drawer, and it's filled with VHS. I pick up Alien, like, what is this magical piece of entertainment? Oh, rated R. Definitely can't watch that one. And then I see the VHS for Temple of Doom. This one behind me. Obviously not that exact one, but that print. And I think, that's the bad one. And I pick it up, and I look at it, and I see that it's rated PG. I'm allowed to watch PG movies. Can I borrow this? Sure, Chris, go ahead. I fucking run out of that apartment, into my apartment, throw that thing into the VCR. My parents aren't home, and I have a transportive experience. Temple of Doom was everything for that kid. It was the most violent, bloody, dark thing I had ever seen at that age, and it blew my fucking mind. Now, granted, over the years, I've recognized the film's flaws, but in that moment, Temple of Doom actually meant quite a bit to me. Because A, it was one of the first times I ever snuck something from my parents and sort of disobeyed them without telling them, and nothing bad happened. I was like, wait, I wasn't struck by lightning, and I watched Temple of Doom. Maybe I can watch other things. Fuck this shit. I'll never forget that day. It was such an impressionable day for me. I watched it as quick as possible, got it out of the VCR, 2 hours later, returned it to my friend's mom. She said, thank you. My parents were never the wiser unless they're watching this video right now. And sorry, guys, I watched Temple of Doom. Sue me. Spielberg made a legitimate effort with this movie to do things differently. It opens with a musical number. The character of Willie, played by Kate Capshaw, is introduced, and there's this great dance sequence that happens, which leads into the Club Obi-Wan sequence. This really fun game of death between Indy and some bad guys where he's forced to return the diamond that he just got as payment for finding these ancient remains, but they just poisoned him in his drink, and they have the antidote, and it creates this great shootout fight sequence where they're trying to get the antidote, and Willie's trying to get the diamonds. And what I love about this sequence is that immediately you're introduced to a hero who is still just kind of a fucking scoundrel. He puts a fork to Willie's ribs instantly. He doesn't know who this girl is. He's just like, yeah, sorry, I'm going to kill this girl unless you give me what you promised. That's Indiana Jones. He's a fucking asshole. Which leads to a chase sequence where we meet Short Round. Now, Short Round, for some people, is annoying. He's not for me. I fucking love him. He's never a burden, you know? Like, he's not like this kid who drags Indy down. Like, you completely buy why this kid would be palling around with Indy. The backstory basically being that his parents were killed and Indy caught him picking his pocket, and ever since then, they've just been pals. But he can drive the car. He saves Indy constantly throughout this movie. And Indy, there's a cool joke that Indy doesn't always notice. Like, there's these moments where Short Round does these awesome things, and Indy's like, hey, quit palling around with that kid! After they escape the bad guys, now they're on a plane, but they realize the pilots were in league with the bad guys. So they jump out of the plane, dump all the fuel, and now they have to get out of this crashing plane, which gets them into a raft that they inflate, jump out of the plane, land on the side of a mountain, slide down the fucking mountain into a river, nearly drown in the river before they finally can calm down for just a second. The opening of Temple of Doom is constant. It's non-stop action. Most of this movie actually is, which we'll get into in a second. Now, yes, it is rather implausible that they would inflate a raft, fall out of a plane onto the raft, and then onto the side of a mountain. This is one of those moments that pushes it just a little bit for me. It wasn't like nuking the fridge or anything in Indiana Jones 4, but it was close to being like, they should definitely be bird shit on the side of that mountain right now. But they're led to a tiny village in India by a man who says that their village is in danger. All of the children have been taken from them. The trees, the foliage, their food, it's all dried up. And they say it's because their Shankara stone has been stolen by these evil people. And they would like Indiana Jones to retrieve it. And he's like, I just want to go home. And they're like, no. Your plane crashed for a reason. You're here for a reason. You're important to this, and you have to help us. And at first he's like, I don't want to be disrespectful to these folks, but I don't really have the time to do this, until he realizes that the Shankara stone is actually extremely valuable. That's what initially leads him towards it, which is in line with his character. He's kind of an asshole. He's going there for fortune and glory. It's not till he gets there and he sees what's going on that he becomes invested emotionally. But on the way, there's a camp scene where Willie is running around encountering all these creatures, bats and snakes, and Indy is just trying to play cards with Short Round. And they're having this really fun, cute little moment together. They have excellent chemistry together, these two actors. That's one of the other reasons I like Short Round. He works really well with Harrison Ford. And they found a great way of reminding us that Indy's terrified of snakes by having the elephant constantly bump Willie with its trunk before finally a snake falls on her shoulder. She assumes it's the elephant and she throws it away. But here's where the film starts to get dark and scary, because their guide stops in the middle of the forest and he's terrified by something. Indy walks towards the camera into this epic, sweaty jungle close-up that I've always loved, and finds this horrific statue filled with severed human fingers. Fuck. That is so cool. And eventually they come across Bangkok Palace, and all seems okay at first, until their dinner. Now, if you're gonna do exposition, you might as well do it with monkey brains, bugs, snakes, and soup with eyeballs in it. You get the needed exposition, you understand that there's this cult that was believed to exist or operate in this area, but not for many, many years. You get all that while Willie and Short Round are horrified by what they're being served. Next, we get a romance scene that doesn't go the way you would expect it to. They start arguing. They're like, you can't last 5 minutes without me. Okay, fine, I'll go in my room. Okay, fine, I'll go in my room. And they just sit there doing the same things, trying to find out if the other person will eventually come into the other person's room. It's really clever and it's kind of cute, but it results in an action scene where somebody tries to kill Indiana Jones. And even in this little fight scene, it's kind of fucked up. He throws a whip around the guy's neck, it gets caught in a fan, and the guy hangs himself. It's like, holy shit! Like, this is still in the family section on Netflix. No. This brings Indy back into Willie's room. He's all sweaty. She thinks that he just wants to fuck, but he's like, no, something's going on. And he eventually finds the entryway to the Temple of Doom. Since Raiders had snakes, Spielberg decided to go with bugs in this movie. Indy and Short Round encounter a tunnel filled with every horrific bug you could ever think of. They're crawling all over them, which leads them into a death trap. Spikes come out of the ceiling and the floors, and they're about to be crushed. They need Willie to come in and find the lever that will release them from this horrible event. This sequence is brilliant, and it's hilarious. There are 2 dead people in here! There's gonna be 2 dead people in here! Hurry!
We are going to die!
This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's so intense, yet somehow so funny, and I think it's because it takes place so early in the movie. You know they're not gonna fucking die. Of course he's not gonna die, but because of its placement early on, he hasn't even gotten all the way down to the temple yet. They can have a lot of fun with it while also really getting your nerves going. So after Spielberg's had all of his fun, the movie gets really horrific. Here is where they discover that this cult is still active. Mola Ram is about to make a human sacrifice to their god Kali. And he takes his hand and he sticks it into this guy's chest and fucking rips out his heart, goddammit. This whole sequence looks beautiful. Douglas Slocum was the DP, and his use of oranges and fire and reds, it's just gorgeous. And here's where I must talk about John Williams. When you think of John Williams and Indiana Jones, you think of the classic Raiders March. You might think of the desert chase sequence and that great propulsive beat. Do not ever tell me that John Williams is some French horn-only guy who just makes heroic, whimsical music, because the chanting choral soundtrack for this cult is genius. That building rhythm, that tempo steadily increasing, so fucking awesome. I remember the first time I saw that heart get ripped out. It disturbed me a lot. It pinned me to the couch, and I was just glued to the screen. And it wasn't just because violence. There was just something audacious about it. Spielberg, from Jaws to Temple of Doom, it's like he didn't give a shit. Like, he did so many crazy things. He was like, Quint, yeah, let's have the shark bite down harder on him. Hey, Robert Shaw, can you maybe spit up blood as you die? Hey, in Raiders, let's just have their heads fucking explode. And that guy, let's have his head melt. That one should melt. And in Temple, he's like, let's just have hearts get ripped out, have weird statues with severed fingers on them, and we'll, kids will be fine. Temple of Doom is, I think, a movie that deeply affected Spielberg and the reception to it. The fact that people were very repulsed by its violence, the fact that there was a lot of controversy surrounding its rating, I think it deeply affected him, and not in a positive way. Because his films after that started to take violence very seriously. He made The Color Purple. He made Empire of the Sun. And Spielberg's use of violence after Temple of Doom became a very serious subject, like in Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan, Munich. He no longer viewed violence as entertainment. It was like suddenly he was opened up, like his eyes were opened up, and parents and people who were offended by the level of darkness in this movie kind of took him away from that really visceral, edgy sensibility that he had about himself for that 10-year period between Jaws and Temple of Doom, 9 years. And I miss that. I really miss that, because before Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Last Crusade was easily the least violent Indiana Jones movie, despite its PG-13 rating. Crystal Skull is even less violent than Last Crusade. Temple of Doom changed him. It definitely changed him. And I don't like that. I like that he was super, super not giving a shit about any of that in this movie. I like that this movie just had so much crazy dark shit in it. And I wish that he did too, because he does not like this movie. He has said in interviews it's his least favorite, including Crystal Skull. He has said that his favorite thing about the film is that he met Kate Capshaw on it, who he later married and is still married to. And he feels that that is why he made Temple of Doom. Spielberg, look, you're being too hard on yourself, man. Temple of Doom is fucking awesome. Be happy about this movie. It's fucking great. Now, if the heart being ripped out wasn't enough, next, Spielberg has child slavery in his film. This cult has enslaved those village children to help them dig. They're looking for more stones. And that also is kind of fucked up. What I like about Indiana Jones is that there seems like there's an edge to it. It's the type of thing that somehow is viewed as family entertainment, even though it's really not. Kids around the world have felt like they're getting away with something when their parents let them watch Indiana Jones because it feels worse than other things in regards to the content that's on the screen. Temple, of course, being the most severe. Following up the heart being ripped out and the child slavery, we have a torture scene. Indiana Jones is whipped. Short Round is whipped. They've created a voodoo doll, which is held over the flame, and then he is forced to drink blood. And he fucking changes into evil Indiana Jones in a brilliant sequence in a room filled with candles where he's rolling around on this stone bed, and he comes into the light, and he is no longer himself. I think one of the reasons I love Temple of Doom so much is because a large chunk of the second act legitimately feels like a horror movie, which is my favorite genre. And there are so many aspects of it that feel frightening and scary. It doesn't feel safe. And it's risky. And I've said this many times, I admire a filmmaker who takes risks. They don't always pay off in Temple of Doom, and we'll get to some of those in a second, but I admire the audacity. One of the things in the movie that I haven't talked about yet is Willie. She's not really a good character at all. Her character is extremely vapid. She's not a very smart person. And she's basically there to flail around and maybe look for some diamonds and fall for Indy. Boring character. She doesn't annoy me as she does with some viewers. Her character is just thinly written, although it does add a lot to certain scenes, like when she's eventually the captive and Indy has now turned evil, and Mola Ram asks Indy to sacrifice her. That whole sequence is fucking awesome. Just seeing Harrison Ford shirtless, looking fucking jacked, by the way. This is easily the most jacked that Indiana Jones ever looks in a movie, especially at the end on the bridge when he's holding that sword and his fucking bicep is rippling. I'm just fucking talking about Harrison Ford's body. I don't give a shit. Let me talk about Harrison Ford's body. Just deal with it, okay? You can deal with it. But when Short Round escapes captivity and finds out that fire is able to jolt someone out of this spell, he uses that on Indy, and Indy and Short Round fight these guys and save Willie. And next we get one of my favorite shots of the Indiana Jones films. And like all Indiana Jones movies, he's got to have a fight with some giant dude, and he fights this big cult member who's actually the same person from the airplane fight in Raiders of the Lost Ark. This dude takes a sledgehammer to the ribs, picks up Indy, punches him in the face, and the punches feel like they hurt. Everything about this fight feels painful. Indy's being stabbed by the voodoo doll, and Short Round has to find that kid and hopefully beat the shit out of that kid and get that thing out of Indy's voodoo doll, and he's on a conveyor belt, and there's rocks, and a dude gets fucking crushed. Directly after that, they end up in a mine car, and we get quite literally a roller coaster sequence. A mine car chase over molten lava and fire. It's brilliant. It's so exciting. It's a very original chase too. When you think of chase sequences, you usually think of cars, trucks, motorcycles, horses, running. Mine car though, that's a new one. And gratefully, a lot of it is shot on set. After slowing down the minecar with his shoe, water from a collapsed water tower starts to fill the tunnels, and they have to get out. Here the three of them get separated, and Indy can have a little moment that calls back the classic sword fight scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, or at least the lack of the sword fight scene. It seems like every chance Spielberg gets, he gives you something interesting or exciting to watch. He could have just ran to the bridge, and that would have been enough. But let's just have this one quick little moment here, which includes a possibly unintentional callback to Harrison Ford's Han Solo in Star Wars: A New Hope. Eventually, they find themselves on this rickety bridge. Indy is surrounded, and he decides, of course, classic Indiana Jones, to cut the bridge in half, resulting in a very fun fight on the bridge and another callback to Mola Ram's ability to rip someone's heart out. And this whole sequence is thrilling, especially John Williams' score, which is almost constant, never-ending throughout the entire film. And Mola Ram falls off this bridge and gets eaten alive by fucking alligators or crocodiles or whatever the fuck. Like, God damn, Spielberg did not give a shit. So they return the stone to the village. Life has returned. There's trees and plants and food, and the kids are freed. Everyone's happy. Indiana Jones and Willie can kiss, and Short Round's there covering his eyes, and it's a cute little ending for an extremely fucked up movie. So the stones really aren't that interesting. Compared to the Ark of the Covenant, there's nothing as interesting as that. Holy Grail in Last Crusade, much better. But I largely prefer these ancient mystical stones with some sort of strange power over a alien skull. Whatever. So the MacGuffin, the thing he's searching for, isn't all that exciting. It's just kind of like a thing that gets him to go there. It's a stone. You can tell they were trying to see if they could make some shit up. Here's some rocks that have like a thing, and that's what Indy's going to go for, and maybe we can do that. Some people even view the Ark as some made up shit, and that's fine, but at least that's sort of like an established thing, and that most people understand what that is. And nobody knows what these fucking rocks are. They're rocks. And they were trying to see if they could make some shit up and continue Indiana Jones movies in that way. And I admire that. I do. I admire that this movie is like the bastard child of the Indiana Jones franchise. And without a doubt, it doesn't have the emotional investment that Last Crusade has, nor does it have the sort of investment we feel in the pursuit of the item that Raiders had. But what it does have, in my opinion, is actually the fastest pace of all four films. I love Raiders and Last Crusade more than Temple of Doom, without a doubt. But I think Temple of Doom is actually faster paced than both of them. So what I'm saying is that even though Temple of Doom is the worst of the original trilogy for me, it's oddly the one I feel like watching the most. I don't know what that means. It means something, but I don't know what it means. It means I'm dumb. That's what it means. I'm fucking stupid. I've loved this movie forever. I still love it. I just watched it a couple hours ago with a buddy of mine who hasn't seen it since he was a kid, and he didn't like it when he was a kid. And now he kind of loves it. It's been a while since you've seen Temple of Doom. Maybe give it a rewatch. I'm going to give it an A-. The strange thing about Temple of Doom is also that it doesn't even really feel like 3 acts. It almost feels like 2 acts. It's like the lead in to the temple and then the temple. And it's just, it never ends. It's just this gigantic hour of action. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my Indiana Jones reviews so far. I've always wanted to talk more in depth about all of them. Look forward to The Last Crusade coming very soon. As always, guys, if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.